Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Shots Fired, where three friends rip on each other and just talk about photography in weird and silly ways. So tonight we're gonna go over some stuff that Adam's gonna share with you, and hope you like this one.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Joe. So guys, I've never actually done the math, but I would bet between the three of us that we have probably north of three decades of landscape photography experience, and over those several years, we have definitely heard a lot of advice, some much better than others, and so we thought it might be interesting to reflect back on all of that advice, both the good and the bad, and pass that wisdom along. I'm hoping we can do a quick round robin with maybe everyone sharing their best advice and the worst advice they've ever heard about landscape photography. And for this discussion, maybe we can focus more on advice that just around capturing an image, not necessarily editing the image. That's the post processing advice is probably another video for another time. Um, so with that in mind, basically anything regarding mindset, composing a shot, ideal conditions, gear, anything involved with actually capturing the image in the first place, and that's all on the table. So with that, geez, maybe how about Scott? Scott, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, yeah,
Best
sure.
best and worst advice.
All right. So, as Adam said, over the years we've definitely received a fair bit of good advice and probably more bad advice, I would say. So to start off with the best advice I've received, and this is kind of a general umbrella topic, if you will, but it would be to let the light and conditions dictate what you shoot. So, what I mean by that, a lot of times we're going out. Obviously, we want great conditions, great light, colorful skies. But as we all know, that doesn't happen very often. Actually, few and far between. So it's what I'm referring to is being adaptable, and if your plan that you had in mind is not working out, being able to pivot from that and capture the best light and conditions that are available. I think we see this often with chasing wide angle scenes. You go out, if you don't get the perfect sky or a good sky at all, it can be really challenging to make a wide angle scene work. So you'll often hear people shoot smaller scenes, right? So kind of what I'm referring to. I guess just don't be dead set on an image and try to force it to work if conditions aren't lining up for you. So I actually have a couple of photos that I wanted to just briefly share in regards to times that I followed this advice and it's worked out for me. So it may be hard to oh, I have to share my screen. I'm an idiot. Uh, I was looking at my own, like, wait a second, you guys can't see this. All right, here we go. So, first one here. Prime example. When you're going to shoot waterfalls, you're likely aiming for a wide angle scene. You want to put something in the foreground, nice misty background. But again, you don't really always get those conditions. And I've also found it a bit more rewarding to focus in on smaller aspects. So this is a just good example of what I meant. Wasn't really anything spectacular with the wide angle, so I pivoted to the telephoto because I liked the dappled light on the landscape. So that is one example as to what I'm talking about. I have another one right here. So um, this was actually taken in Oregon, another place where there's tons of waterfalls. That's actually what we went there to photograph waterfalls. I couldn't really come away with anything of the waterfalls, but I loved the way that these trees looked, just getting this nice glow on the edge. So again, what I'm saying, I just kind of pivoted away from my original plan and let the light guide me and dictate what I thought was interesting. Here I think this is actually probably one of the better examples I have. By looking at this image, you would not really be able to tell where it is. Maybe you can say the desert, right? And you would be correct, but this is actually an Arches National Park. There's no arches in here. There's nothing really that makes nothing in the photo that shows off the beauty of Arches. Just happens to be this crazy sky. So I kind of pivoted away from shooting the beautiful arches that are so abundant in the park, and kind of just focused on the scene because this is where the light was, right? So I found that this would make more of a compelling image than just focusing on mediocre conditions and trying to force it to work. All right, so now I am going to switch over to my worst advice. So I'm going to pull up a prime example here. So worst advice I have is you should always have a foreground element or something in the foreground of your images, right? But you're probably going to hear this more so with your wide angle scenes. And it's funny, I actually was just scrolling on YouTube the other day, and it was one of those 5 tips you need to know to make you a better landscape photographer. And the first thing they said was put something in the foreground, and I kind of just laughed to myself. But the reason I laughed is because I have tried this so many times, and I've just made worse photos by trying to implement this to every photo. So if you can see my mouse, the cool part of this image is what's up here, right? And just based on how I compose this, that is now maybe half the screen, maybe not even half the screen. And I kind of just made the scene a little bit more chaotic and complicated than it needs to be. Not every image is going to benefit from having something in the foreground. I think a lot of the times we are so desperate to find something to put in the foreground that we actually ruin the image. So I feel like this was a good example of that. I have one more, and this one actually pains me to this day because these were cool conditions. This is Alabama Hills. I mean, everyone's familiar. These mountains speak for themselves, super photogenic. This was taken right at dusk and blue hour. And I think this is actually probably, in my opinion, my favorite time to photograph these mountains. And for whatever reason, I opted to just put this big blob right in the foreground. Does not add to the scene at all. Really just screwed myself over big time. I've tried to crop this. There's no saving it, unfortunately. I will have to go back and reshoot this, but I felt like this was another good example because you can see this takes up 3/4 of the image. The cool stuff is all back here. So yes, those are my examples. And to just reiterate, you do not always need a foreground element because a lot of times you're actually going to ruin your images. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it really adds to the photo, but I would say do not feel forced and do not feel like you always need an element in the foreground because if it doesn't add to the image, it's likely taking away. I will stop sharing now. I'm curious to see what you guys think about the best and worst advice.
No, it's good. And yeah, there's been plenty of times where I've taken the wide angle out, put some piece of shit tree that's been decayed for years, and it's really not any good. Like if you see what the good stuff is in the background, just shoot the good stuff. You don't have to add all 50 elements. So yeah, and that one waterfall that you did, break out the long lens for, great idea. Especially if there's nothing around there to shoot with it.
Yeah, Scott, I would say that for your best advice, obviously very, very good advice, and that's kind of to me that's one of those key factors on what makes like a really good landscape photographer. Someone who can read the conditions well and is able to adapt, doesn't just go with their plan A. They know plan B, plan C, plan D. Yeah, I actually really liked a lot of those images that you shared, especially that one out in Arches. I thought that was gorgeous light. That was kind of that's definitely my kind of shot. Like very simple, but still has a ton of depth and obviously amazing conditions, amazing light. For your worst advice, yeah, definitely couldn't agree more. It's for me, I actually, at least the style that I tend to focus on more is, it's usually I don't have any foreground at all, and yeah, I completely agree that you don't always need a foreground, middle ground, background. That's what we've been taught since we, really started shooting with a camera, and that's actually not the case. And there's so many other styles that are just as impactful, just as creative. I would argue, and if you do put something in the foreground, I think you said it well. Make sure that it adds to the composition, right? Either it's interesting enough where it becomes like an interesting subject, or it use that foreground to actually frame the middle ground and the background, which tends to be pretty effective as well too. But yeah, completely agree. I think those are two really good pieces of advice there, for sure.
Yeah, thank you. One, I heard addition by subtraction, and you can actually add to your photos by excluding those elements that kind of go against the photo. So that's another way to remember it. But who's next? Who wants to share their best and worst?
Yeah, Joe. Why don't you go ahead?
All right, you're gonna like this. Mine's not for images. Mine's purely for gear. So
Totally okay.
The worst, the worst is definitely that buy the best, which is absolute bullshit. Like I've been using Benro for years now. I think I've bought 2 tripods in total, and after 9 years, that's not a bad track record. And I think I've spent maybe 100 to 125 on each one. So just get good stuff, get quality stuff, but you don't have to spend $800 or $1,000 or $2,000 on gear, on one piece of gear, unless it's the camera. I mean, obviously our cameras are expensive and the lenses are expensive. The only thing I will say in regards to the cameras, definitely get the best lens you can. I know some of these third-party companies to really try and compete with the major companies, but there really is a quality issue going from one to the other. Outside of that, the best thing I can tell you to get, and you're gonna laugh, but it's true. Carry a trash bag with you, and carry wipes with you. Number one, the trash bag is multi-use.
Okay.
You can use it as a poncho in the rain. You can put it over your camera if it's coming down hard. If you don't want to put all your stuff away and you have your composition, set and ready to go. The wipes, obviously, you're gonna want to use those for cleaning. If you went out to the desert and you got some like dust, you're gonna want to dust that off, wipe it down. Also, if you just have nature calling and you're in the woods and you got to take a shit, you got wipes and you got a trash bag and you're golden. And also, the trash bag, if people are wandering around being assholes and just leaving their litter, go around, help pick it up. It really makes the place a little bit nicer, and you can always carry it out. Not everybody carries out the trash. So those are my best tips and worst tips.
Well, what size trash bag are we talking here? Are you talking like a 13-gallon?
Just a standard kitchen.
Yeah,
just a tall kitchen trash bag.
Okay. Sounds good.
I mean, if you got to use it as a poncho, you got to use it as a poncho. And put it over your backpack. Like I said, put it over your camera. If you don't want to, mess your composition up, you're solid.
I don't know about that one, Joe. I've never carried a trash bag in my life, but
dude, you should do it.
I do like the thought of you cleaning up after others. I think that's definitely good practice. But best photography advice I've ever gotten.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm with you there, Adam. Wasn't really sure which direction this was going once you started talking. But okay. Yeah.
It's useful. I'm telling you.
I'm all about
it's probably the most useful.
About protecting the environment and cleaning up, right?
Yep.
But I'm gonna just leave it at that. In regards to your worst advice, I do agree. I think people get GAS, gear acquisition syndrome, right? Well, nice acronym for you guys.
Yeah.
And you can spend thousands of dollars on gear that you don't really need.
Nope.
You get a sturdy tripod, which you don't need to spend thousands on. I will say, I think the area to not cheap out, as you said, is probably glass.
Yep.
As that can make a big difference. But yeah, you can definitely get away with a nice budget kit. I think that was spot on.
Yeah, for that one, I definitely agree and disagree in certain ways. You know, I think one of the big myths that we've always been told, at least for a beginner landscape photographer, is that gear doesn't matter, right? Gear doesn't matter. Gear doesn't matter. Don't spend thousands of dollars on something where you're just learning. And I completely agree with that advice. But also you get up to a certain level, like as you continue to learn and grow and develop as a landscape photographer, you get up to a certain level where some gear actually does matter. Yeah, I completely agree, Joe, that perhaps tripod doesn't. You don't have to buy a $1,500 tripod for sure, but there is other gear where, depending on the type of landscape photography that you're going for, say astrophotography or macro photography, you need to. Unfortunately, you do need to buy certain pieces of kit in order to
Yep.
Either capture it or at the very least not spend hours and hours in post at the end of the day.
Yes.
Some of this gear can make your life like much easier. But yeah, and the final thing I'll just mention, you mentioned some of the third party lenses are questionable quality sometimes, but I will say that there's also some really good options, especially with those with the reputable third party lens.
Yeah, like Tamron, Sigma, you're gonna be safe
Tamron,
with.
Sigma, yeah.
TT Artisan, or
exactly, yeah.
What are some of those? Rokinon. You might see some, especially for like astrophotography. Like astrophotography, you want some incredible sharpness, especially in the corners, or you'll get some flaring and some all kinds of artifacting that you don't want, especially for stars.
Yeah.
So anything like that, yeah, you're definitely gonna want the better glass.
Yeah. But I don't know. Maybe I'll keep that in mind for our upcoming trip here to Arizona.
You're never gonna take Astro. Let's be honest.
Pack those
you can't stay up
bags.
that late. You go to sleep by like what, 8 o'clock?
I'll definitely bring the garbage bags for sure.
But those Mountain House meals going to be going right through you.
Oh, jeez. Good Lord. All right, guys. Maybe I'll start with the worst advice that I've ever heard.
Is it trash bags?
Again, it's yeah, trash bags. I will say
anything
that,
Joseph has said.
It's hilarious. Good Lord. But I will say that yeah, again, this kind of goes back to some of that advice that we heard when we first started out, is to only shoot at sunrise and sunset. The best light is at sunrise and sunset, which, yeah, I agree with. It tends, we tend to have much better light at those hours. But I've heard advice in the past of, and even some, very very strong photographers, very seasoned photographers now, who, they won't even bring their entire kit out in the middle of the day, which I think that they're missing out on some potential great opportunities to shoot. And I'll share a few examples. First and foremost, this is, I would say, that dapple midday light, when you have those big puffy clouds that that cast these amazing shadows across the landscape. That actually might be my favorite type of light. And let me share this with you, so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. Can you guys see my screen here?
Yep.
So I know that you're both familiar with the southern Utah out in Hanksville,
Yep.
where this is the side of Factory Butte, and I got this one at 11 o'clock in the morning. So this was not considered the most premium light in the world, but it was just this amazing dapple light that was hitting the landscape, and I never would have gotten this if I had followed that advice to just leave your camera at home and don't go out and shoot in the middle of the day. I love this type of light. I can share probably several other examples of dappled light that hits the landscape in certain ways that kind of illuminates the right part of the landscape, which especially the main subject of a landscape. This is I find this to be a really effective way to capture some midday amazing light. And and I tend to especially for those midday shoots, I tend to use I tend to use my telephoto much more than my other lenses. Again, just so that I don't get that sky, which tends to be pretty harsh, but again, at least on the landscape itself, and if you're able to kind of zoom in using your telephoto and finding those right vignettes, those kind of optimal vignettes, I think that tends to be pretty effective. And I guess you don't just need your telephoto as well too. Here's another example of. So this is a bit of a wider angle shot here. This was taken in Scotland. Again, this was midday, early afternoon. This was originally meant to be a scouting mission for that upcoming sunrise the following morning. But yeah, we got up to Old Man of Store. I know you're both familiar with this location, the Owl Sky. But,
Yep.
I got this great frame, and as I was framing up, again, this was just meant to be very much a scouting mission, but this huge snow squall actually, and the snow and rain squall actually came in right behind me, and it was this intense wind that was kind of overtaking the landscape. As you can see, this is where it was just beginning, and it kind of created these really amazing conditions where you have what seems to be nice midday light in the middle of the frame, but this kind of framed up dark storm clouds that are coming in. Again, I would have never gotten this if I didn't go out in the middle of the day, and it was actually a really interesting shoot because there was like this I'd say 100-200 foot cliff right here, and this intense wind that was hitting me from behind, and if the wind was going the other way, I actually wouldn't have been able to get this shot because the front of my lens would have gotten covered in rain and snow. But yeah, this is just kind of another example of you don't necessarily have to wait until sunrise or sunset to get some pretty special conditions. Now that said, I would say that the best advice that I've ever gotten, it's somewhat similar to Scott's, slightly different, more just in terms of the mindset that you have when you go into a shoot, and specifically, when I go on a shoot or when I know that I'm going to a certain location, I might look up some frames of that location online beforehand, just for inspiration and at least to better understand what I can expect before being on site. But I think the best advice that I've ever heard is that don't use that sort of pre-trip scouting to set unrealistic expectations for yourself. I think that going in with that mindset of, again, somewhat similar to Scott's, that I'll get on site, I'll be familiar with the landscape, but I'm going to be able to quickly adapt to the conditions, versus just focusing on a certain expectation for a shot. I think is pretty important, because that can not just affect your creativity, but it can also affect your mood and how you later you I guess think back and reflect on the trip itself, right? So I'll share again another few examples here. And I'm not always the best at this, by the way. I'm not always the best at taking my own advice of like not setting too many pre-trip expectations. But here's an example. I know that you're all familiar that this is Abraham Lake in Canada, in the Canadian Rockies, and this is Adam Gibbs. We've all seen these kind of amazing shots of this flooded lake with these aspens poking up and some of this amazing color. And when I was on site, so this was taken several years ago, 4 years ago at this point. When I was on site there last year, unfortunately, a lot of the lake hadn't risen to this level, and a lot of these trees were actually dead. So you didn't get some of this amazing fall foliage there, which but that said, quite frankly, I was able to just kind of shrug my shoulders and say, well, that's okay, and instead, Scott, to your point, I instead shot the conditions. I use a lot of the same, I guess, principles that I was expecting to use going in to shoot a flooded, these flooded aspens, but instead of a flooded aspen, I had this sort of nice frosty field. With some amazing pre-dawn color there as well too. And here's another example of, again, I didn't get that amazing fall foliage, but instead I just kind of dialed in to certain interesting aspects of the area, and I was able to kind of dial in a different type of shot than perhaps I was expecting. And again, I just didn't have a ton of expectation. I didn't let those expectations sort of dictate how much enjoyment, or I didn't let it dictate my creativity. One example where I probably failed with this is, and I know that you guys remember this one, is this is called the Acatenango volcano, and this is down in Guatemala. I went there around this time last year. I had so many expectations for this trip. I was so pumped for this. This is, you kind of climb one volcano and then overlook another volcano, where you have this other active volcano. It erupts typically every 15 to 20 minutes, and that's kind of what I was expecting going in. And I had all these ideas for certain shots, but when we climbed the volcano, unfortunately, this active volcano was not quite as active during that day. I didn't see any sort of major eruptions, and unfortunately, like what I expected going in just didn't quite happen. Unfortunately, there was some, as you can see, there was some I guess lava at the top of the volcano, but really I just wasn't kind of thinking clearly. I kind of let my failed expectations get the better of me, and during that morning when I climbed up to the top of the mountain, instead of pivoting quickly, unfortunately and by the way, like these are still pretty amazing conditions even without an erupting volcano in the background. There's a lot that I could have and should have done with this landscape. You have this cloud inversion with these kind of really photogenic volcanic peaks popping through, and this like long shadow. There's so many sort of minimal frames that, in retrospect, I could have and should have gotten, but instead I just rushed to find some foreground. It just was not working, and ultimately I came away from this trip, one, without like any keepers, which was a bummer, but two, like just this. It was such an amazing trip. I was only there for 3 or 4 days, but we had such an amazing time in Guatemala. Antigua is so beautiful, but I just kind of left with this like bad taste in my mouth due to the expectations that I had set prior to the trip. So just a thought, especially like considering your mindset going into this, don't let your pre-trip scouting and research and kind of set those expectations for you that can ultimately sort of blow up in your face.
And you did ask us as soon as you got back to go back down again.
Yeah, I know. I'm already planning the next one. I mean, I was so bummed when it didn't erupt, but again, there was a ton of great
I'm still
release
baffled why you didn't break out your
other
long lens for
photographic
that.
opportunity.
Did you take your long
I
lens
should
on
have.
that hike or no?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
I lugged it all the
Yeah.
way up. So 5,000 feet up. Yeah, I lugged it.
Because, dude, I'm not gonna
Um,
lie, that if you had that long lens out there, that would have been fantastic
yeah. I
for
mean,
all
there's a
that
lot that I
for
should have
that, you
done.
know.
There's a lot I should have done when the light was at its best. There
Yep.
are a few frames that I think are okay. I kind of like this one as well too. So this
Yep.
was the base of that active volcano, and you got some great
Nice.
um, atmosphere, but yeah, it just didn't quite come together for me on this one.
Always
I
next
have
time,
to
buddy.
say, I'm definitely guilty of camping out on a composition, and in my head
Missing the real
for
shot.
yes, I have done it so many times. I'll have done research and seen these iconic images with breathtaking conditions. I get on site, don't get any conditions that look anything remotely like that. Yet I'm still so focused on trying to get that one shot that I had in my mind, and most of the time it doesn't work out. So yeah, no, I agree with you. I think that is certainly a great piece of advice, and as well as shooting midday. I will say I am not the best at doing so. After sunrise and that morning, soft morning glow goes away. I pack up my gear and maybe I'll scout around, but I don't pull it out as much as I should. But there are definitely a lot of shots to be had midday. You just probably have to work a little bit harder. But I think that is also advice. Not shooting during midday it would be you missing out. So yes, I think that is solid advice there as well.
Is that it, guys? Is that all we got?
I think so.
All right.
Till the next one, guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, if any of this was useful to you guys, if you learned anything from it, if you have any thoughts on any of the things we talked about, Joseph trash bags, if you can see any use for that in your own practice,
Send
that'd
any
be
and all
really
comments down below and
yes.
subscribe if you do care to watch
Yeah.
us again. We will have even stupider commentary in the future.
Yeah.
Especially on the
by the
next
way,
one.
and by the way, any other good advice that you've heard? We're really curious to hear the best landscape photography advice that you've heard as well too. So, yeah, definitely comment, and yeah. We're interested to hear it.
All right, guys. See you on the next one. Thanks for watching.
Cool.
Take care.
See ya.
Have a good one.
Bye.